what to do after the tax sale. The first thing we need to do is you need to make sure that you have a good record-keeping system. This can be very simple. What I do is I have a file folder for every certificate, or I make a file folder for every certificate that I purchase. There'd be many different ways to keep records, from digital to hard copies or whatever. You do have to keep the original certificate. I recommend you keep any original documents you get at the tax sale, but make sure you have a good record-keeping system. This has saved me money in the past, just by being able to retrieve records quickly and being able to make copies and send them to the county because they say, well, you didn't buy that one. Well, I'm saying, yes, I did. Here's a copy of my certificate, and scan it in and email it to them, and they say, oh, well, you sure did. So you need to be able to respond to situations like that, and having a good record-keeping system will allow you to do that. You need to evaluate the properties that you have purchased. Now, hopefully, when you did your due diligence to start with, you got a pretty good feeling for what condition they were in. Are they occupied? Hopefully you know that, relatively close to the sale time, but you're gonna need to reevaluate from time to time. I recommend periodically driving by and at least kind of on the surface evaluating what the property looks like. Does it still appear to be occupied? Is it still in decent condition? Is somebody still taking care of it? That kind of thing. Consider getting insurance on residential properties. We've been talking about off and on about preservation improvements, and there is a provision in the code. I think it's 4010-122, talks about getting the ability to get reimbursed for preservation improvements, and it specifically mentions insurance being reimbursed for insurance premiums. Now, I do not recommend, if you buy 25 properties at tax sale and they're all residential, I do not recommend systematically going out and trying to get insurance on all of them. Number one, you're probably going to have a hard time finding an agent that will do that. But number two is I'm not sure that I think that's the most prudent thing. If a property is well kept and I find out it's got a mortgage on it and somebody's living there and I have a tax certificate on it, chances are those people probably got insurance. So that's what, in my opinion, is a low risk situation. I'm just going to let that one cook, and I'm going to, just let that one simmer, and that's going to be a nice CD for me, at least for the time being. If you have a situation where you're pretty sure the property's abandoned, and you're not quite as confident about the situation in terms of somebody paying attention to it, somebody looking after it, somebody taking care of it, those are going to be the ones that I seriously consider getting insurance on. Now, back to the insurance agent thing. I don't know a whole lot of agents that will insure tax certificate properties. I use a guy who is a sponsor for REI Live, Joseph Buff, who's with Farmers. And he has insured ones that I have either taken possession of or either in process of taking possession of. And so he understands the language and he understands what we're doing here. He's somebody you can check with. I'm sure there are other agents that will talk to you about that. Somebody had asked me earlier in the day about getting insurance on properties, and this is obviously this is that subject, and you just need to be prudent. You need to be careful. You don't want to like I say, you don't want to go out and do it on all of them necessarily, but I would consider doing it on those that don't look as secure. So anyway, something to think about.
Is that value for the insurance, is that just dictated off of the tax assessment or?
It can be. You mean the value that you, yeah. I don't want to insure it for more than necessary. Obviously, your premiums will be higher. But at the same time, I want to make sure that if it burns to the ground, that I'm going to be happy with what's left in terms of my insurance. My insurance payoff. So I think it would be fair to base it on, unless it's just really skewed, I think it'd be fair to use the tax assessment value. Anybody else have any questions about insurance on tax certificates? I think in certain cases it can be a very prudent thing to do. Yes, sir.
If you end up getting a tax deed, then at that point in time, you're really probably thinking about insurance, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Keep in mind, you remember our little 6-year timeline that we had up here? Where you got the tax sale here. You go 3 years. You got the tax deed here. You got another 3 years. Keep in mind that if they come in during this period, they're going to the county to redeem. If they come in, or if they want to redeem during this period, they come to me to redeem. It's going to be a lot easier for me to collect that. I mean, I should be able to collect it here too, but it's going to be really easy for me to collect it here. So, and to answer your question, yes, if I got a tax deed, I'm definitely moving in that direction. Yes, ma'am.
A friend of mine who does several tax properties just had a thought about that in terms of insurance, that, sometimes the owner may be awakened and want to be malicious. And so it's always good to get insurance just to protect your business.
That's a great point. Yes, a great point, especially in a situation where there might be ill will, or somebody thinks, hey, if I can't have it, nobody else is. That's a great point. So if they torch it, I want to have some benefit. Really, I mean, seriously, y'all know people are crazy. I mean, people do stuff for nothing. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. When they could they could just leave and have peace, or they want to fight a war on the way out. So anyway, any other questions about insurance? Okay, let's talk about this subject. Carefully consider paying other liens when notified. Now, I used to have the position that, man, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to buy a certificate, I got to get a certificate on the property, and then I get notified, because I'm the assessee of record now, I start getting notices from the city of Birmingham, or from a fire district, or from somebody, sewer department, hey, these liens are due, we're coming after you, you need to pay these liens. And my former position was, hey, heck yeah, I'm going to pay them. I'm going to pay them, and I'm just going to act like those are preservation improvements. And if the people want to come and redeem and they send me the form, the verification form, I'm still in this certificate period, then I'm going to load them up. I'm going to say, hey, you owe me $1,000 for sewer. And I had been very successful. I say very successful, maybe 5 times, 10 times, at collecting things like that. And then, matter of fact, I'm in some litigation right now on one where I'm claiming that. I'm claiming fire dues and sewer. And there's a chance the judge is talking like she is not going to let me have the sewer. They're going to let the people, this is actually a tax deed now. And I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. Or I'm thinking this, I'm not saying this to her. Let my attorney talk to her. I'm way too smart to talk to her. So I'm thinking, no, wait a minute. You've got a sewer lien against a property that you want me to pay off. I've paid it off. And I'm including that in my redemption amount because I'm in this second 3-year redemption period. I'm engaged through my attorney. I've engaged the property owner to either redeem or get out. And so his attorney has said, no, the statute doesn't provide for me to pay, for the owner to have to pay sewer lien, even though the investor has paid the sewer lien. And I know that the sewer department can independently foreclose on their sewer lien. And it's a local lien. So when they foreclose, that's going to make life very difficult for me, even though I have a tax deed. They can basically, they may be able to cut me out, I'm not sure. They can definitely make life difficult. I don't want life to be difficult. I want life to be easier. So, so we've got a situation where the Redeemer is dragging their heels, and I'm not sure the judge is going to make them pay. I do understand there are some cases out there that have said that, it's not what the statute says, but I understand that there are cases out there that have basically been determined in my favor historically, in the sense that the tax deed purchaser does need to clear or take steps in clearing other liens if they don't want their rights to be extinguished. I'm a tax deed holder. I do not want my rights to be extinguished. So the bottom line is be careful when considering paying other liens, especially if they're high. Now, I do know from experience, condo liens, and I'm pretty sure sewer liens too, if I'm a new owner and I'm coming on the scene, that the purveyor of those liens, the sewer billing or the condominium association, they, especially if I've foreclosed or if I've taken possession of tax or whatever, they cannot enforce collection past the time that I came on the scene. In other words, if I came on the scene a year ago, they can come after me for that year, but not for the 10 years prior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, so you have to be careful about that. So if there's 10 years of sewer due, you don't want to come in and say, oh, I've had it for a year, I'm going to pay the 10 years. Because arguably, the redeeming party could turn that around on you and say, you didn't have to pay the 10 years, you only had to pay 1 year. Okay, so you got to be careful about that. I would recommend getting some legal advice before you jump off the cliff paying the other liens, but you do need to be aware of them. And you know, if it's a $100 item, roll the dice. If it's a $5,000 item, get some legal advice. That would be my advice to you. So, but those are issues.
You're talking about before a tax date? Or are you talking
I'm talking about
before
anytime during this process.
Anytime.
Any other questions about, yes, ma'am?
Is it kind of the same with when you buy into a subdivision, the association fees? Would that still be?
That would be the same thing, yes, ma'am. Now, let me say this about homeowners associations and even condo associations. You know, especially if it's not a lot of money, relatively speaking, I want those people to be my friends.
Yeah.
I want them to think fond thoughts of me. So I'm not trying to, you know, get away with anything with them. I'm trying to make them happy. I'm trying to make their job easier. I want to be looked on as a favorable property owner, even though I may just have a tax deed or tax certificate on the property. So I'm going to kind of work extra hard to make them happy and probably try to pay that one if I can, especially if it's not big money. So I would encourage you to work with those people.
One more to that. Like on the state site, when I was in the state site for Shelby County, they have like a lot of the vacant land in these subdivisions. If I purchase like one of those pieces of land, would I still be responsible for association fees? Even though I'm not living there, but I just have that plot of land, that paperwork?
Well, I can tell you they're going to come after you because they're looking for anybody they think should or could pay. And if you're a new assessee, they're going to think you should pay. So I cannot, I have no idea if they can legally enforce that, but they probably can, because if it's not paid and they have a lien on it, they can foreclose on that lien ultimately, if they want to. A lot of times they don't want to because they don't want to pay the lawyer to do it. But they still can. So, it might not be a bad idea. And what I would encourage you to do is, hey, go sit down with them. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them exactly what you're doing. Say, hey, I got a tax deed on this. I'm going to try to get clear title to it. Let me pick up paying the dues from the time that I bought the tax deed. And then when I get clear title to it, we'll come back and negotiate the rest of it. If I'm on the other side, I'm going to say, heck, wait a minute. We've been getting zero for 10 years. Now I can get something. I'll take something. You see that? You're kind of making it such that they'd kind of be silly not to take you up on a situation like that. Okay, make sure the property has been accurately assessed to you. A lot of times, for some reason, the ball gets dropped. It's not assessed to the purchaser. It goes somewhere else. You're not paying attention. It goes through the tax sale again, sold to another investor. Then you got to go redeem. And if you have bought a bunch of properties and you let one fall through the crack like that, and if it goes multiple years, you get in trouble really quickly in Alabama. Tell you a story that makes that point. From time to time, I get a call from there's these companies, a couple of companies in New York that sell tax portfolios from corporate investors who bought in the past, and they'll call and say, hey, Gary, I got this 50 parcel portfolio in Alabama. Are you interested? Sure, I'll be glad to look at it. And almost invariably, it's a situation where they bought a tax certificate back in 2012 for the 2011 taxes. So they bought it in May of 2012, and they came in and they kind of did what the company was doing. I told you that came in this past year and just kind of bought everything in sight and spent a lot of money. And then a year or 6 months later, they realized, that probably wasn't such a good idea. I don't think we're going to pay the subsequent taxes on that. So they bought it in May of 12. Well, then in May of 13, guess what happens to it? Goes to the tax sale again because they didn't pay the subsequent tax. So then another investor buys it, 513. But they do pay the subs. Well, guess what? They get a tax deed in 5 of 16. Well, then in January of 18, I get a call from the guy that says, hey, you want to look at this portfolio? Sure. Well, guess what? The majority of the properties have tax deeds to a subsequent investor on May 16th. These people functionally have no more interest in the property because the only way you can perfect your tax deed interest in a property is to pay the subsequent year taxes. The statute says you don't get a tax deed, I'm paraphrasing here, you don't get a tax deed unless you can show that unless you have proof of payment for the subsequent year taxes. Well, if somebody else has bought it, I can't show proof that I paid it, can I? So basically, what this company has done is spent millions of dollars on these 50 property, or a few $1 million, because they got excess bids on them, on these 50 properties, and they're out of luck to pursue doing anything else because they can't solidify their tax deed interest. So my point is, the state of Alabama the state statutes are very punitive for people who do not pay their subsequent taxes. Don't be one of those. Yes, sir.
What happens to their excess, bid?
That's a great question. It depends on who the county determines has the right to that excess bid. Been lots of lawsuits, lots of legislation that tried to boil that down. you're gonna have to check with the county. I think in Jefferson County, what they would say is, the owner of the property, as of this lien date, the lien date for 2011 was 10/1/10. Whoops, 10. So whoever owned the property is entitled to that excess bid. So, okay, there's a mortgage on the property. See, I mean, it gets so fuzzy, so cloudy, so quick. And I know there's a way to wade through that, but every county is gonna interpret that differently. So, I'm sorry, I don't have a clear-cut answer on that.
This one,
Yep.
this one may be a little out there, so, like in that situation where someone bought 1 year, one of the firms that finally got on the radar, and so a firm came in and bought subsequent years, and then say that something happened, they didn't show up, they didn't wanna do it that year, so the first person came back and got it. Is that now creating more like what you were just talking about?
Well, what should happen is if the first party that bought it on this date wakes up and realizes there's a subsequent settlement, if they're still in the redemption period, they need to come in and redeem. Okay? So they can redeem this party out as long as they come in within the 3-year redemption. The problem is that 3-year redemption period for the second buyer, for the first buyer, but was caused by the second buyer, had already expired. So that was the problem. So yeah, as long as this 3-year period hadn't expired, this party can come in and redeem. That's how they protect their interest. The problem is they were asleep at the wheel for 3 years. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Be prepared to pay the subsequent year taxes when they come due on October 1st. Most counties pay interest on the date you pay. We covered part of that just then. We mentioned the other part this morning. I recommend being ready to pay those on October 1st. This is important. Immediately before paying your subsequent taxes, make sure that there have been no last-minute redemptions. So I have 10 properties that as far as I know, are not redeemed, and I want to be ready to pay my taxes on October 1st. Say this is September 15th. So I get my list ready, I check them, everything looks good, I'm getting ready to pay. Well, on the last day of September, or maybe I go down and to pay on to the office in person to pay on October 1st. The first thing I want to do is take my list of 10 properties over to the person who does the redemptions, and I want to say, have any of these been redeemed, in the last couple of weeks? Invariably, one or more will have been redeemed. Now, the problem is if I've mailed that check in, if I say, okay, I'm just going to mail this check in, and I've got 10 properties, or one of them is redeemed, and I send that check in, they're going to process my check, and they're going to take who knows how long to refund the one that was already redeemed, because they're not going to let me pay the current year on that one. They shouldn't let me pay. So you don't want to get in that situation, because then you're at the mercy of the county sending you your money back. That's a bad predicament to be in. Sometimes it can't be helped, but you want to minimize that. And if you know going in, hey, there have been no last minute redemptions, when you write the check for those subs, you know that it's going to be clean, at least going forward for that year. So I had to learn that the hard way, and but that's something that's doesn't cost a lot to do, just a little bit of time, and it can pay dividends. Does that make sense?
Do I check that with the assessor's office?
Probably with the collector's office, whoever's doing the land redemption function. Usually it's the collector. In Birmingham, there's their own little side of the office there that does land redemption. So that's who I would go to. And typically, they're going to be glad to check it, because they don't want to have to do a refund either. That's more work for them. So
The assessor office doesn't have the records.
they don't have the payment records.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to check against. Yes, absolutely. Okay, if a property appears to be abandoned, cautiously and prudently take possession. I cannot overemphasize cautiously and prudently. There are, well, let me back up. There was a case a few years ago, situation where this couple bought property. I don't know if they bought it at the tax sale or bought it from the state. It was a commercial piece of property. It was in the Bessemer Division, and it was a warehouse situation, and it was a business where, I don't think it was an active business, but it was a business where a guy would renovate or redo vans. And so this couple goes in there, and they had 2 or 3 vans in there that he was working on. And so they removed the vans from the premises, and they removed a bunch of his equipment. This is on a certificate. And they began to remodel the building and turn it into, I don't know what, but something completely different character than what it had been. And so, unfortunately, the owner had not been paying attention, and these folks were way down the road by the time he discovered what was going on. So he found a lawyer, and they took them to court. They sued them, and I don't know what they sued them for exactly, but these people basically went in, and one big no-no was removing personal property. Another one was not giving any kind of notice whatsoever. And they got the owner got a huge judgment against these people. I mean, it was like over $1 million. It was huge, and they didn't pay near that much for the tax certificate on it. So that was another situation where don't be stupid goes a long way. But it also, don't think that this, and I think I say this later, but don't think that because you've got what appears to be a good situation on this one piece of property, that this is your ship that came in. I mean, don't have that mentality. Just say, hey, I'm gonna take the next step on this one, see where it goes, knowing it could redeem at any second. You will be so much more successful if you adopt that strategy. Now, back to cautiously and prudently taking possession. Excuse me. I'm a pretty conservative guy, as you can probably tell. If you have, you know the old story about the tortoise and the hare, and how the tortoise almost always wins because he's slow and steady, and the hare is very erratic, and although very energetic, is not very prudent. We want to be the tortoise in this situation, and that's what I would advise you to do. And maybe you have a situation where you have a house, and you're pretty sure it's abandoned, it's still got personal property in it, and you're thinking, what would be the prudent thing to do? Maybe it's a certificate. What would be the prudent steps to take here that would allow me to move on down the road in terms of being able to, make this into a money-making venture, or more of a money-making venture? And so I'll tell you what I would do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to send out notices. I'm going to try to assessee of record. I'm going to try to send a certified notice to them. I'm going to get on Google and see if I can find an alternative address under the same name. Now, if it's John Smith, you got a problem. But if it's not, then it'll be a little easier. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the neighbors. I'm going to say, hey, what's going on? Just tell them who you are. Don't, hey, I'm a real estate investor. I'm a tax deed purchaser, whatever. Can you tell me what's happening next door? I've got an interest in this property. But I want to, reach out and contact the people if there's anybody around. So I'm going to talk to neighbors. I'm going to put up a sign with my phone number on it. Hey, this is a tax property. I usually try to put up something that'll scare them or something, you know. Just say, you know, we have hereby taken possession of this property, excuse me, on this date. Here's my company name, here's my phone number, call me if you have questions, and put up half a dozen signs like that all over the property, and then take pictures of it. One thing I like to do is I like to take there's that caution tape, or people call it police tape. I take that and wrap it around the whole house. Just go around the whole house one time. I mean, it's hard not to see that. And if people see that, excuse me, and there's a sign on the door, they're typically going to call my number. So I want to be open. I want to be notorious. I want to be obvious. I want to stir up some, I want to pull these people out of the woodwork. If in fact anybody is entitled to redeem, I want to encourage them to redeem. If I've done all that and 6 weeks go by and I have heard nothing, I've got no phone calls, I'm going to take the next prudent step. I'm going to go change the locks. I'm going to leave all my signs up. I'm going to leave the police tape up or caution tape up. I'm going to go change the locks. I'm going to let that sit for a little while, a couple of weeks maybe. Then I'm going to, at some point in that process, I'm going to evaluate what is inside the house. Is there anything inside this house that anybody could remotely assign value to? Or has it just been trashed? Is there just trash inside the house? If there's just trash inside the house, I'm going to feel real good about going in and cleaning that trash out. If there's furniture inside the house, TVs, computer, whatever, anything that somebody might deem as valuable, I'm going to be a lot more cautious about that. You can really get in trouble quick over moving somebody's stuff. Matter of fact, what I would recommend doing is having your lawyer file for writ of ejectment or eviction so you can get possession. And then when you do that, the sheriff's department will come and move their stuff out to the curb. That is the safest thing to do. So I think it's called a writ of ejectment. It's an eviction proceeding. Just tell them, just say eviction. You need to. What's that?
That's what it is.
Okay, okay.
And you're doing this under a tax deed, right?
Certificate.
That's the safest way, but you can do it under certificate. You can do what we're talking about under
If it's
certificate. Yeah.
So under certificate, if it's vacant and it meets those criteria, you can go ahead and move somebody in there?
You can, but your risks are higher. That's why I'm saying, see the cautiously and prudently? I mean, by the time we do all the stuff that I'm recommending that you do, normally there's not anybody who's going to come back, okay? Now, I can't say that that's 100% true, but again, common sense is going to tell you, if I've got signs up and I've talked to neighbors and I've sent notices out and I've heard nothing for 6 months, chances of somebody coming back are pretty low. Now, again, I'm not your lawyer. I'm just the guy on the street telling you what I've seen and what I've done and sharing with you my opinion. But again, I've tried to exercise common sense, tried not to be stupid about the situation. I'm sorry, somebody else had a question.
Actually, I did.
Yes.
Do you document the items in the home and take pictures of that as well?
Absolutely. No matter what's in the home, I'm going to take a lot of pictures. Matter of fact, I'm going to take a lot of pictures of the outside too.
Sure.
But-
And then I'm also wondering, I mean, of course, this is more work and you wouldn't want to necessarily do this, but do you think that renting a storage unit for a particular period of time and putting their things in that? I'm only thinking if somebody were to come back and sue me for those particular possessions, I don't want to have to pay someone. And then I'm thinking, is the storage unit worth more than being sued for their?
That's a great question. I think sometimes that can be a good idea. Actually, if I can get the sheriff to set it out, I don't have to worry about storage units.
Sure.
So, matter of fact, if you can get the sheriff to set it out on the streets, the neighbors will help you get rid of it. I promise you. I had just a month ago, I had it set out, and I mean, they didn't have the stuff set out on the curb 30 minutes before people. I mean, it's like a free yard sale. I mean, people just loading up stuff. They're looking around. loading up stuff like it's, Jubilee. So anyway,
As far as the changing locks, and everything, if there's like someone's busted out a sliding patio door.
Yep.
Or other large hindrance, block it up for possession or changing locks, when you put plywood or something, just to keep it secure.
yeah, I'm going to secure the property. In a case like that, I'm probably just going to put up plywood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's covered under the same thing as like changing the locks and stuff like
Well,
that?
when you say it's covered, what do you mean? In terms of reimbursement?
Both reimbursement and legality of like, is it okay to do stuff like that? Because you are, defacing or altering, I'm trying to think of whatever they may throw at you.
Well, if you've got pictures before and after, you're actually improving the property. Okay? So if the sliding glass door is not there or is broken out, and I show a picture of that, and I show where I put up plywood, I'm not saying you would never get in trouble legally, but I think from a logical standpoint, you've certainly preserved it.
Made it
I think
safe
any-
for the kid were to roam onto the property.
Yes, obviously you've made it more secure. And the argument is you've made it secure for the owner, whoever that is. You're presuming that it's going to be you, but if you get before a judge, it could be anybody. It could be the person before you, but nonetheless, you're preserving the value of the property. And you're not putting a swimming pool in. You're not adding another story. You're just sealing it up so it doesn't deteriorate further. So again, prudent, cautious, common sense stuff. I mean, that's what I would recommend. Yes, ma'am.
In terms of redeeming it, could they sue you for what they left in it?
If you have moved it, they could. Yeah, sure.
But not if the sheriff put it out.
Correct. They can't sue you if the sheriff moved it out. Yeah, correct.
Do you bother cutting the grass or anything?
I do. That's part of me letting everybody know that somebody else is in charge. And that's a pretty low cost thing too. I mean, if I don't get that back, it's not the end of the world. So yeah, I'm probably going to do that. Yeah. Plus, if my boys need something to do and they're sitting around watching TV, yeah, we're going to cut that grass. Yes, ma'am.
No, see, the sheriff will put it out, but the sheriff doesn't actually, pick up a sofa and pull it out, do it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. They do. Now, I have had a situation, which we'll talk about in a little while, that was so bad that I met the deputy there, and he opened the door, and the people had had animals in there for a long time without letting them out. And he said, I'm not going in there, but I will let you sign this paper and give it to you right now. In other words, give you possession right now. So, but then the one I had just a month ago, yeah, they brought a crew with them. They hauled the sofas out, the tables, everything, hauled it out the curb.
And who pays for the crew? The sheriff?
I'm guessing the county, what's that?
Alright.
Inmate labor.
Inmate, yeah, it probably was.
Work that Cowell County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trustees out-
I know I didn't pay for it. Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know if this is comparable, but I just did a unlawful detainer action against a tenant
Okay.
and took the sheriff 4 months with his crew to come out. And when it was all over with, he wanted $200 from me. So in that case, it's a different situation, but
That's not
I paid
illegal,
for it.
is it?
Yeah, I think it's legal.
Really?
Yeah.
Who wanted $200 from you?
The sheriff wanted, that was his fee. for
Oh,
doing
okay.
it. Yeah, and he charged the landlord, you might say.
Okay.
This is a landlord-tenant situation, wasn't quite. the same thing.
Okay.
But it's comparable.
Yes, it is.
But it took him 4 months.
Yeah, it's not fast. It's not fast. Well, I'll give you a hint. We got our order back in October, and does anybody know what holidays are in November and December?
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody know of anybody getting evicted in November, December? No. So it was 1st February before we got it.
Actually, ours was in December 7th. We had.
Oh, really? Okay.
We had done got a judgment in September, and they didn't get out there until December the 7th,
Okay, so they did come in December. Okay.
in that case.
Well, good. That
Close to Christmas.
shoots that theory. Yes, sir.
Just to re-verify, to make sure that I'm honest, this is all possible and higher risk in the tax certificate.
Yes.
stage.
Yes.
It's just higher risk.
Yes.
Can be done.
Yes.
But you're talking about a vacant piece of property.
I'm talking about a property that I have determined to be abandoned for all practical purposes. Okay? Now, abandoned can mean different things to different people. Again, common sense, don't be stupid. I have a friend, I'll tell you this story. Have a friend who bought a condo at tax sale last year or 2 years ago? 2 years ago. Decent condo, good area of Birmingham, high demand for rental. It was an older condominium building, but he started kind of trying to flush out who the owner was. It was vacant. He kind of sped up the process a little bit, went in, changed the locks. It wasn't trashed, place wasn't trashed, it wasn't mistreated, but it was kind of worn. So he started rehabbing it. And I'm going, whoa. I said, you don't need to do that. I said, you haven't given enough notice, you haven't done enough due diligence to find out who the players are. You need to be very cautious. So he goes in, he spends, I don't know, $5,000 to $10,000 changing out the carpet, repainting the whole thing, putting in new appliances. Well, the owner lives in South Alabama, and his wife had died of cancer like 6 months before. So he had other things. It was a rental property for him, but he was managing it himself. But he had a full plate and couldn't quite get to the business. Well, my friend got sued for trespass. And so he wound up settling, but he lost a ton of money on the deal because he was trying to crank it up and go real fast and not do common sense things to follow through. And you can't do that. That's going to bite you. If it doesn't bite you on the first time, it will bite you on the second time. So you don't want to do that. By the same token, I've had a situation where a couple of situations where I took over on a certificate. And I went through all that, well, I'm telling y'all to do, putting up signs, talking to neighbors, and sending out notice. And the folks never came back on the certificate. And matter of fact, I rented it out about right here, which is, I don't advise you being aggressive about that, but all the lights just kept turning green. And I kept expecting somebody to come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I want to redeem, which I would have let them, but they never did. Well, now, I've rehabbed these situations. I've got a good bit of money in it, and I'm over here. Well, they can't afford to redeem. I mean, if they couldn't afford the taxes here, they can't afford to redeem it here, unless another party comes in the picture. So, all that to say, yeah, you can do it on certificates, but just go through these cautious, prudent steps. Yep. Go ahead.
I have kind of like two questions.
Sure.
Either stage that you are.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. You send the notices and blah, blah, blah. The person show up and they say, I don't want to redeem. You can keep the property.
Mm-hmm.
It's a piece of paper, or we'll do a quick claim.
Mm-hmm. Quick claim deed does it?
And then with that, it will erase the 6 years.
It will erase their ability, it will erase their redemption right.
The redemption.
Yeah, now if there are other claimants on the property, if there's a mortgage company, whatever, it's going to be they're going to have a separate right to
Yeah,
redeem.
different.
But if they're the only interest in the property, only owner of it, on the record, on the title, and you have gotten a quick claim deed from them, then yeah, you're done with this.
Now, that if there is a mortgage on it, can they wipe me out?
They have a right to redeem. So when you say wipe you out, they got to pay you.
Okay,
They can't just make you go away.
okay.
But they can enforce their right to redeem, in which you're going to have to deal with them.
And that's the same period, or the redemption time start when?
A mortgage holder has an exclusive 1-year right to redeem from the date that they have been noticed. They have been, yes, certified notice. So if you certify a notice to them over here, the 1 year starts, or if you certify a notice to them over here, the 1 year starts. But it's independent of the rights of the owner to redeem. So that's where a title search comes in. Let me say this about something you said a minute ago. If I allow, I think you said, something about allowing somebody to redeem either it is a certificate or a deed. If I get to a deed and somebody wants to redeem, I'm sending them to my lawyer because he can get a fee out of that and I don't have the headache. Okay? I can let him be my spokesperson and it doesn't cost me anything. So when somebody comes, I've got a tax deed and somebody wants to redeem, here's my lawyer's phone number. Now he's gonna call me and say, okay, send me a list of what you got in it and, a schedule of your costs and everything. And we've got a template and I just fill it in, email it to him, and he collects it. Well, the statute provides for him to get a reasonable attorney's fee in that case. And so he does the work and gets paid for it, and it's less work for me, and I just kind of have a system that I drop it in. So once it gets to this point, I've got a system for it to be redeemed. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just say you're in the certificate
Mm-hmm.
state,
Yep.
and you have actually, it's the same question for both.
Okay.
sides, but if you have, just say you have somebody that's in it that's renting the property.
Yep.
And then the original owners come in and they wanna redeem it. What do you do about the person that's renting the property? Do you have a certain amount of time?
That's a good question. If I rent out property that's either here or there, if I haven't extinguished the former owner's right to redeem, I'm going to have in my rental agreement, I'm going to have not a contingency, but I'm going to have a line on there that says this property is a tax sale property or a tax deed property and is technically subject to redemption. In the unlikely event that a redemption is pursued by a former owner or whatever, I will let you know immediately and give you as much notice as possible.
Okay.
I have probably done 7 properties like that. I've never had anybody come back to redeem.
Okay.
But you still want to put that in there. You still want to put that in there. So that will cover you, and they can't say, well, you didn't tell me it might get redeemed. No, we did too. And I always point that out to them when we review the rental agreement.
So adding on to Tony's question about the quitclaim deed, just
Mhm.
say you, I guess you meet with the original owners and they tell you that they no longer want the property, and that's when you can do a
Quitclaim deed,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, typically, most people are not going to say, hey, Gary, you're a great guy. I really want to walk away from this property and not get anything. Here's a quitclaim deed. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Usually I'm going to make it worth their while. I'm going to give them a few $100s, hey, or $1,000, say, hey,
Usually they know the period of time and they know that they got you.
yeah. Well,
I mean,
yeah, well, they know, yeah, and a lot of times they know, hey, I can make this easy or I can make it difficult. I can make the investor spend a lot of money on legal fees,
Yeah.
or I can make a little cash up front and everybody's happy. So that's what I would try to do, is see if I could, hey, for a fee, will you give me a quitclaim deed? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in terms of the title search, we talked about that we hadn't really plugged it into the process. So when would you do it? Once you get either the tax certificate or the tax deed? Or-
Well, it depends. If I've got a certificate and I'm considering taking possession of this certificate, I'm gonna do a title search then. If things are rocking along and, somebody's in there, and I'm not looking to do anything till I get to the deed period, I'm not gonna do a title search till I get down here. Matter of fact, if I get to the tax deed and I wanna kind of turn up the heat on it, I'm gonna give it to my attorney and say, hey, can you check out the title on it? Because he's gonna add that to his fee, which if they come back to redeem, they're gonna have to pay that anyway. If they don't have to come back, if they don't come back to redeem, I'm gonna need that title search anyway. So either way, I've got it at that point. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we talked today about the dividend or the interest strategy and also the strategy about maybe eventually owning the property through tax certificates and all that. Is there another strategy to try to get the certificate and maybe if you really want to own it and go to that person and say, look, here's $10,000 for your right of redemptions, or some other angles that we haven't looked at today that you could tell us about?
Absolutely. Similar to the one we just spoke about. If it's a distressed property maybe it's an here's what happens a lot of times. A lot of times somebody will inherit a piece of property and they either got issues, they may have health issues, they may have, they're just not very wise issues, and they just want some cash and they'll assign their interest to you for cash. There will be lots of situations like that. So you want to be looking for opportunities where a person might just want some money to get out of the picture. You might have a situation where you got a lot of heirs on a piece of property, and it's the kind of thing where you got 5 people that own it and nobody's taking care of it. That one's going to be a little bit more complicated. But if you can chase down, if you can identify through a title search who those people are and make each one of them happy with a quitclaim deed, then you all of a sudden, we're talking about, clear title as opposed to assuming there's nothing else on the title as a result of the search. But if you get all those people happy and get a quitclaim deed from them, then basically you've got property free and clear. So.
If, going back to something you said earlier, a mortgage company has a year's right of redemption. Say during the certificate, you notify the mortgage company, and during that year, they do not redeem. Do you have to notify them again once you get a tax deed?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. Not if you can prove that they were noticed.
So in the certificate stage, year 2, you start your notification so they can go ahead and knock them out before year 3 hit.
You could do that. Yeah, you sure can. Have a realistic view of the probability of redemption, some tax sale statistics to keep in mind. This is what we talked about earlier today. 50% of properties sold to investors at tax sale will redeem within 1 year. 75% of properties sold to investors at tax sale will be redeemed by the end of year 2. And 90% of properties sold to investors at tax sale will be redeemed by the end of year 3, which means only 10% or less of property sold to investors at tax sale will actually mature into a tax deed. So it's important to keep the real world scenario, real world statistics in your mind, and so that you can manage expectations. That's huge. Managing expectations keeps you from doing stupid stuff. Keeps me from doing stupid stuff.
Now, I know you said the mortgages have a year, to fall back on. Any other liens have any fallback? Oh.
No, I mean, they may have a normal right to redeem, but only mortgage holders have the exclusive 1-year right to redeem. We are going to talk about some fun stories, or what I would call fun stories, or success stories. We'll talk about those first. Everybody good? Everybody comfortable? Okay. The first story I want to tell you about is about a house in Blount County that we purchased. Let me give you just a little bit of background. As I told you, I worked for Jefferson County from 1984 to 2009. And I couldn't buy properties in Jefferson County when I worked for the county. That would have been a conflict of interest. Matter of fact, I wrote off and got an Attorney General's opinion, state ethics opinion, just to make sure of that. And they said, "You're right, Mr. Boyd, you cannot buy Jefferson County properties." So I did not while I was employed by Jefferson County. And so as a result, I went to Blount County and St. Clair County and other counties outside of Jefferson and did just onesies and twosies kind of thing on a very small scale. But in 2004, I bought a tax certificate from the state. It was a house that was abandoned. It had multiple mortgages on it. It was in a pretty good school district, and it was in a pretty high demand area. Anybody ever heard of Woodhaven Lakes up on the Jefferson Blount County line. It's an old development around a lake, but this property was not waterfront, but it was on a little street that went not far from the water, maybe a block or so from the water. But what happened on this one, that's the picture after we renovated it. But what happened on this one is it was basically abandoned. I got a certificate a year, or within the next 6 months, it turned into a deed. I didn't know near as much then as I do now, but the Lord was merciful and let me not make too many mistakes on this one. We sent out notices. We did a title search. This is the one that had 3 mortgages on it. Now, this is in 2004, 2005, we get a tax deed. We go in and change some locks. We sent out a few notices. Nothing's happening. This has got a homeowners association, and there was a few $100s in delinquent homeowners dues. So we said, yeah, we'll pay that because we want you to be our friends. And so we did that. So we're getting kind of more and more hooks in it as time goes on. And so, like I say, we knew it had 3 mortgages on it. The total of the mortgages were like $125,000. The assessed value on this property at the time was only like $98,000. Does that tell you anything about the economic situation of the housing market at that time? Okay. Well, as you know, 2005, 2006, the market did not get better. It got worse. So we renovated the house. We put a tenant in there, and we were getting, back then, we were getting about $850 a month, and we rented it out for, I don't know, 8-10 years or so, and got great rent, pretty good tenants. We had 3 or 4, I guess maybe 3 or 4 different tenants during that time. Pretty good tenants overall. And so I thought, well, maybe it'd be a good idea to go ahead and quiet the title on this one. So we began a long process, what wound up being about a 3-year process to quiet the title because we had 3 mortgages on it. Had some other encumbrances on it, but those went away pretty easily. But basically, none of these mortgage companies wanted to foreclose at any point in the process. And eventually, I think 2 of them wound up signing a release. That may not be the right term, but signing a release for their interest. And the other one, we got an order for release of their interest because they wouldn't respond to our notices. So wound up getting clear title of this one. And I probably had about, over the course of years, probably had a total of about 50 in it. As you can tell, I put a new roof on it and painted it, and it's got a new HVAC on it beside it there and that kind of thing. And I think we sold it for about $114 here 2 years ago. So that was a pretty good gig there. And in the meantime, we got a lot of interest. We got a lot of rent during that time. So that was pretty good story. Blount County number 2, Blount County house number 2, it was a little smaller than the first house. It was very convenient. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back here to this one, tell you real quick. This is one other thing I forgot to tell you about this one. This is one of the situations where even a blind mule finds an acorn every now and then. This house is right near the Jefferson County line. The Jefferson County line is like right here. You could throw a rock across it. Well, the Jefferson County school in that area is Pinson Valley. The Blount County school in that area is a brand new school. I forget the name of it. It's right there on Highway 75. We had a lady, the last tenant that we had, there was a lady who's a real estate agent who lived up on the water in Jefferson County, part of it. And she said, tell you what, I have got a son who is 15 who I would very much like to go to Blount County to school instead of to the Jefferson County school. And I have a daughter, and a daughter who's recently married and her husband. And what I would like to do is I would like to pay you rent and let my young married daughter and her husband live here. and claim residency for my 15-year-old son so he can go to the new high school. And that's exactly what we did. But they were willing to basically jump through any hoop we wanted to make that happen. And the reason, pure and simple, is because it wound up being in a good school district, and it wound up being geographically located. You know, I could have never picked the county line would have been right there. So we were very fortunate that came into play. But anyway, second feel-good story was another Blount County house. It was a little bit smaller than that one. It was a good rental size. It was convenient. It had a mortgage. Matter of fact, it had been winterized. And you know how mortgage companies will hire somebody local to come by and winterize a house, especially if they're getting ready to foreclose. It had one of those signs on the door. It had a sign in the bathroom. This bathroom has been winterized. This kitchen's been winterized. Do not do this, all this stuff. And I thought, well, they're asleep at the wheel. They're going to redeem this anytime. They never redeemed, or they never foreclosed. I thought they foreclosed, therefore they're going to redeem. They never foreclosed. They never redeemed. We got a tax deed, and we went in and renovated that house and had tenants in there for about 6 years, and then cleared the title and sold that one, and didn't make quite as much money off that one as we did the first one, but still made good money on it. So those are a couple of success stories. We also had a mobile home out in St. Clair County. Got to be careful about mobile homes, and I'll really get into that in just a minute. This is one, it's a double wide on about an acre and a half lot, and it did not have a mortgage on it, but the title on it had been canceled, and in the deed, the mobile home was combined with the real estate. That is very important to remember. Most situations, the mobile, and I'm going to sit down here for a minute, the mobile home still has a titled vehicle. It's treated like a motor vehicle in the state of Alabama, and it is separate, for legal purposes, it is separate from the real estate. This is a little house in Trussville, and it was one, I didn't even remember applying for it. One day I got the price quote in the mail from the state, and I thought, son of a gun, this has already got a tax deed on it, or tax deed due, so I didn't have to pray about that one very long. We bought it, we didn't have to do a whole lot to it, clean it up, repaint it, and put a new HVAC unit on it, and then rent it out, and it's been a great little rental property. Again, geography is everything. People will live in a tent in the Trussville School District. So it's just a simple little 3-1 house. Now, one thing that I think deterred people from buying this one to the state, it had a pretty big IRS lien on it and a pretty big state revenue department income tax lien on it. And that doesn't bother me because, as I alluded to earlier, the tax lien is, the property tax lien is the 900-pound gorilla in the room, with the possible exception of local liens. And so what would happen is the IRS would have a right to redeem, just like any other lien holder or claimant against the title. The IRS does not want to be in the real estate business. They want to put the rock over the hole of the guy who owned that property, so if he sold it or if he was benefiting from it, then they would be there to get their money. Well, if he's not going to benefit from it, and I'm the new sheriff in town, so to speak, or the new property owner, they don't have any qualm against me. They will release that lien. So we haven't quieted the title on this one yet, but we've done it before when the case was like that. And, you know, in the quiet title action, my attorney notifies them and tells them the situation and certifies this, and they basically remove the lien, or they always have up to this point. So, you know, that's why I'm not really afraid of those types of liens, even though it may have spooked off some other folks from buying it from the state. Okay, now, those are the happy stories. Here's a couple of sad stories, but one from which I still learn from today. Vacant lot in St. Clair County. This was my first tax property ever to buy. This was probably in 2002. I got the list from the state, and man, I'm scouring. I'm thinking, hey, here's a vacant lot. It's got a value of about $20,000. It's in the Pell City division. It's not far from the lake. It's a little subdivision that kind of runs parallel to the lake. It's got some modest-sized houses in this subdivision, and this lot is between a couple houses. It's on a cul-de-sac, and I'm thinking, this could be good. So, I mean, I could, buy it for $600. So I thought, yeah, we'll buy this. So I'm paying taxes on it, and get a tax deed on it, and I get my lawyer to file a quiet title. Pretty simple. Cost me about $3,000 through the quiet title. I'm thinking, I'm still pretty good. I've only got about 4 in it, and I'm fixing to turn around and sell it for 20. This is going to be great. So I get to dig in a little more, and I realize that this lot has not one but 2 drainage easements going across it. So then I began to compare some of the county records, and I realized that the lot wasn't quite worth $20,000. So I put it on Craigslist or something for $18,000. We're going to see what we can do on this. It's going to sell it myself for sale by owner. And so, nothing but crickets. And I lowered it by like $2,000 a week till I got down to like $5,000, and I didn't have anybody want to do anything with it. I'm thinking, man, this is a disaster. And so I talked with a local real estate agent. I just laid all the cards on the table. And she said, yeah, I'll list it for you. And I said, I'll just give you a flat fee because the percentage of that's not going to be worth it. So I'll just give you a flat fee. She said, yeah, I'll list it. So she did. And had maybe a couple of phone calls about it. And I'm thinking, I can't give this thing away. And so I put it, finally, I didn't want to take up any more of her time after about 6 months, nothing really promising. And so I let my contract with her expire, and we didn't renew it. And she was grateful. And so I thought, well, I'm just gonna, I got to get something for it. This thing's eating up my bandwidth. I need to just get it off my plate. And so I think I put it on Craigslist for like $9.99. And a guy called me, and he said, hey, I'm a builder. I'm just kind of getting into the building business. It's kind of my side gig, and I really need a lot to build on. And I wonder if I could buy that one from you. I said, absolutely. I said, you need to know, here's how I got it. It's got 2 drainage easements on it. I have no idea what the restrictions are, et cetera. I told him everything I knew. And he met me in the parking lot at Burger King and gave me $1,000 cash, and I gave him a deed to it that my attorney had drawn up. And that was the best deal I have made because it got it out of my life. But takeaways on that, be careful on vacant property because a lot of times it's not worth as much as the tax person says it is, especially if there's a variation in that lot. It may be in a great subdivision, but if it's got a drainage easement on it or some kind of other easement or some kind of topographical challenge to where it's not going to be easily buildable, run away. Just run away. So learn that one the hard way. The next, not really a fail story, but a educational story. Mobile home in St. Clair County, also known as Green Tree versus Dominion. I am Dominion. That's the name of my company. This is the patient in question. This is a mobile home, but it is more of a modular home. It has 4 VIN numbers. Does anybody know what that means? 4 pieces. They brought it in 4 pieces. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3 right there, and then there's the 4th one right there. And I mean, this thing is massive. It's probably got 2,200 square feet. So, bought it at St. Clair County tax sale. I can't remember what year, 2008 maybe. And got a tax deed on it. It was occupied. Got an order for possession. This is the one where I met the sheriff's deputy over there, and we went in that side door right there, and he opened the door and he said, "I'm not going in there. And here's your paper saying you have possession, sign right here, and I'll see you later." So we did. I got possession. And so I hired my crew to come in there and do a clean out. And I mean, it was like wear a mask and everything clean out. We took down everything that could absorb any kind of odor. Like we took it down to the subfloor. We didn't take out sheetrock out. We probably should have. We took down all the window dressings, any drapes or anything fabric or porous. We took it away, and we coated the inside of the house with about 3 coats of Kills after we had dried it out good. We also had to make a bunch of roof repairs. Now, the county had this mobile home, this whole package valued at about $98,000, improvement and land. The lady who bought it was one owner. She did have a mortgage with Green Tree. And so we started renovating it, just basically started painting inside. We hadn't done a lot to it. I had my signs up everywhere. I had at least 4 signs along the front of it there. I had changed the locks. Again, we had a deed. So this is not really what I would call riverboat gambling. I was operating from a pretty solid position. So one day I come by to check on it. We're in the middle of trying to do some things to the inside, and I come to those side steps, and somebody's broken in on the door. I can tell they've jimmied it. It's kind of bent the panel out there. So I go in, all my signs have been taken down, and somebody from Green Tree has come in and put their signs up where my signs were. This property is being repossessed by Green Tree. You're trespassing if you're in here. We're going to come and steal your birthday stuff or whatever if you come in this house. And with a phone number. So I called a guy with a phone number. I said, "We got a little misunderstanding here." Told him who I was, told him, "Oh yeah, I'm aware of the property." I said, "Okay, I have a tax deed on the property, and you all have a right to redeem. I don't dispute that. I'm happy to let you redeem. Here's my attorney's name and number. You can call him." He said, "Well, we're not interested. We're coming to get our trailer." I said, whoa, you don't understand. Let me explain this to you again. So I told him again, I have a tax deed. I have the right to use and possession of the property. You cannot move my trailer. It is my trailer subject to your right, you executing your right of redemption. He said, no, you don't understand. We don't give a flat or rat's flying rear end or whatever, but we're not redeeming you. We have a right to come and get our trailer. And I said, no, you don't. He said, so you're denying us our right to get our trailer? I said, yes. He said, okay, that's what I need to know. And a couple of weeks later, I get served with a notice that my company has been sued for unlawful possession or whatever. And so I'm still renovating, though. I hadn't stopped renovating. I did push the pause button for about a month, and I thought, this is crazy. I'm going to go ahead and renovate it. And so we did. We got a tenant in there. This thing stretched out for about 3 years. They sued me in St. Clair County Circuit Court. We won there. They had used an attorney out of Tuscaloosa who basically handles all the stuff for Green Tree in this region. And so when they lost at the county level, they appealed it to the Alabama Court of Civil Appeals. And when they did that, they hired a different law firm based in Montgomery that's all they did was civil appeals. So they hired a guy who that was his That's all he did. So he was good. And so I had my same attorney, and we felt like, hey, we're right. We just need to get this thing straightened out. So we get to the Court of Civil Appeals, and the Court of Civil Appeals basically said this, and I'm paraphrasing. They said, listen, we understand what Dominion has done. We understand what Green Tree's rights are here. Here's the bottom line. While we acknowledge that there is a statute in the ad valorem tax section, property tax section, that does speak to mobile homes, there is also a section that characterizes mobile homes as motor vehicles, and they are titled, and therefore they are not what's addressed under the ad valorem tax section is not pertinent to this situation, and this property is a titled property and is handled under this section. And so we're going to send that back to St. Clair County Circuit Court under the direction that the judge has to make a decision based on this code section instead of the original code section that y'all are operating under. So we said, we have confusion everywhere. We need to help the Court of Civil Appeals out. We're going to take it to the Alabama Supreme Court. So we tried to do that. Alabama Supreme Court said, tell you what, we are very busy these days and we're not going to take that case. So what that means is the decision by the Court of Civil Appeals was now the law of the land. Now, here's what that means, and it's still in effect today. What that means is that when the tax collector gets up and has a tax sale and purportedly sells a piece of property that has a mobile home on it, they are not selling you the mobile home. They're selling you the dirt.
When you're paying the taxes for it, is it including the improvement?
It will, that's exactly my point. The improvement, the value of the mobile home is listed on the tax record. Matter of fact, it's listed on, you remember I had a picture of a tax certificate up there? When they sell you that certificate, it's got the value of the mobile home on it. Okay, they're still doing that statewide. That has not, to the best of my knowledge, it has not resulted in a change in practice among tax collection officials. But when I took it as far as we could take it, Court of Civil Appeals said, no, you didn't get any right to the mobile home conveyed to you. Now, the only exception is if the title has been canceled and the mobile home has been combined with the real estate on the deed. It will be noted on the deed. You remember the first mobile home I showed you in St. Clair County that I bought, the little double wide? The only reason I bought that one is because I'd learned my lesson on this one. And on the deed, when I did a title on it, the deed says the mobile home title's been canceled and it has hereby been combined with the real property. So, in this case, we go back to St. Clair County Circuit Court. We had a different judge. The first judge had retired. He probably dead by then because it took so long. But so we have a different judge, and I'm just thinking, there's no way. I mean, I knew who the judge was, but I'm thinking he's a great guy, but there's no way he's going to get his arms around this situation. It is too complicated, and I'm about to get barbecued. And so thankfully, I was wrong. He did a great job. He demonstrated to me that he knew a lot about the situation. Either knew a lot about it or he brought himself up to speed on it. And basically what happened was he said, yeah, Green Tree, you've got a right to do this. You got a right to come get your mobile home. You got a right to this. But he created the decision or gave the decision in such a way that it created such a narrow window for them to execute their rights that it wasn't feasible for them to do that. For example, it said, okay, you got 30 days to come and remove this mobile home off this hillside. And oh yeah, you see this, you can't damage any improvements that have been made.
Yeah.
So you got a screened in porch that kind of wraps around the back of that. So they got to, number one, pull 4 pieces of mobile home off this hillside. This is a pretty steep hillside here. It's got a paved driveway over here. But got to pull off this hillside. Oh yeah, you can't damage that. Oh yeah, and you got 30 days from today to do it. Go. So, needless to say, we negotiated a settlement, and while I cannot reveal what the details of that settlement were or are, let me just say that I had a smile on my face when I got the news. But all that to say, be careful about mobile homes. And while they can be a good angle when you're dealing, especially when the room's full of corporate investors, mobile homes, as you may know, are great rentals.
Yeah.
Great rentals. They're really good if you're trying to go that direction, but just be careful and make sure you check the title before you launch off on them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're gonna, bid on a mobile home, you better pull the deed.
I would recommend that. Yep.
The titles automatically would say that, right? We wouldn't have to, would say that the mobile home is included with the land type deal.
The one in St. Clair did. Now, that's the only other one I purchased since this little debacle. So I'm assuming that if the title's been canceled, that they all would have that on the deed. Yes, ma'am.
That's not the same for modular homes though, is it? Like are they actual homes?
I think the issue is going to be, is it titled or not? Has it got a motor vehicle title?
Modular as well?
I don't know if modulars do. I'm saying that's what would be the difference. Because mobile homes normally do have a motor vehicle title. So if the modular home does not have a motor vehicle title, I think you'd be safe. But ask your lawyer. Yes, sir.
If you got a parcel of land that's empty, are you allowed to, once you get the tax certificate, place a mobile home on that strip of land or parcel?
Good question. You know, I guess the real issue is, can I get away with it? Legally, can I do it? Probably. It's probably got holes in it in terms of from a legal standpoint. I'm sure it's, somebody could argue that you're trespassing, and I would say, okay, give me 24 hours and I won't be trespassing anymore. And I'd pull it off and go, do something else with it. So I wouldn't, if you could do it cheaply, I don't think it's a bad idea. But if it was going to cost a lot of money to move on and off, I don't think I'd go there till at least I had a tax deed. I've only bought one since this one. I learned a big lesson on this one. Yeah, even us dumb guys can, figure that out after a minute. But I've only bought one since then. Or here's another exception. If there's a property and there's a mobile home sitting in the middle of 100 acres, I really don't care about the mobile home. If it goes away, come get it. Yeah, I still got the 100 acres. So if the value of the property overshadows a mobile home, I'm still going to go with it and not really care what happens to the mobile home. Yes, sir.
Just kind of piggybacks on that a little bit. Saying that you've got 100 acres.
Yep.
Is it ever, I'm assuming tax deed forward, to do anything with like the mineral access, so like trees and timber or anything like that? Or do you wait until everything's completely quiet before you do any kind of resource?
I'm probably going to wait till everything's quieted. I know that there's been some pretty significant lawsuits over people coming in and cutting timber. People are willing to fight over that. And I'm going to be willing to spend $5,000 or $10,000. If it's that big a deal, I'm going to spend $5,000 or $10,000, clear the title, then I'm not going to care after that.
I've seen where properties that I've watched before was in a situation where someone came in and got the resources and then abandoned it. Like you could tell
Yeah.
they had not been back on the property.
Right.
Stripped it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's a good idea, because I think if you bought it for taxes and you came in and basically pillaged the place and hit the road, I think you could be held liable.
So do you ever do a perk test on any of your vacant land that you purchase, or is it ever needed to do that?
If I don't think I need to do a perk test. I can't think of a reason I need to do a perk test unless I'm trying to qualify it for building or putting a mobile home on it, I guess. If you're going to put a septic tank in, I have a perk test. So, it's just going to depend. I'm probably not going to worry about that, though. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is there something that you could have done to find out about those easements in that other property? Like where could you have gone and
Yes.
checked? What should you have done?
Yes. The vacant lot. Yes. What I could have done is I could have gone to I think it was on the plat map, the original plat map for that subdivision. I could have gone to probate in St. Clair County, I could have taken the legal description, gone to probate and say, hey, I want to see the plat map for this. That's where I eventually found it. The problem is I didn't find it till 3 years after I should have, till I'd already pulled the trigger on it. So, but yeah, that would have definitely been the prudent thing to do.
Kind of piggyback off hers.
Yeah.
I mean, do they record surveys? So, I mean, it should be, on the survey, right?
Well, a subsequent, so the original plat map, which establishes the subdivision, those will be recorded. Subsequent surveys don't necessarily have to be recorded, I'm pretty sure.
They don't get recorded.
Yeah, yeah,
They survey just to see the
yeah,
boundaries.
yeah.
In Alabama, some other states they do.
Okay, all right.
So on that first piece of property that had multiple mortgages,
Yep,
is the reason you weren't concerned about that is because they would have to redeem it and pay you?
yes. I knew that if they foreclosed, and if any of them foreclosed, they had to redeem me out, which I was okay with them doing. They just never came to the table.
So you're really not worried when you see lots of mortgages?
I mean, it may complicate the quiet title part of the equation, but if I get into a quiet title and they want to redeem, guess what? They got to pay everything. They got to pay all my legal fees I've incurred up to that point anyway. So if they don't pay it, I'm going to have to quiet the title, quiet the title. So either way, it's not going to hurt me.
Speaking of quieting title, can you go over that with us real quickly? Is that a big deal? Does that take very much?
Well, basically what I'm going to do when I get ready to quiet the title is I'm just going to give it to my lawyer who does this all the time.
When you end up going to trial on that?
Not usually. Usually by the time we get to that point, it's really just kind of academic. I've never quieted a title and somebody said, oh, wait a minute, I want to redeem. Stop the train. Let me redeem. Never. I mean, I probably quiet titled maybe 5. Never had that happen. Once we get to that point, we're 5, 6, 7 years. In that one house, I was about almost 10 years into it. And so, there was virtually no risk of somebody coming to redeem at that point. If they had, that'd been okay. But it really, by that time, I've got a lot of money already invested in it for just taxes and interest. Just the basic improvements I've done. And throw on top of that attorney fees. If they're going to pay all that, they could have just paid the taxes and been a lot further ahead. So, see, it really doesn't make sense. It is possible, technically, legally. Yeah, they could come back and redeem it. Doesn't make money sense at that point. Or I don't think it does. Yeah.
Do you have a certain time frame to quiet the title? Like after the deed, once you get the tax deed, at the end of the tax deed?
That's a good question. There's a recent Alabama Court of Civil Appeals case called the Rio Prop case, RIOPROP, and I can't remember who it's Rio Prop versus somebody, that says, hey, if you get to this 6-year period here, you've had a certificate 3 years, you had a deed 3 years, and you have done nothing, you haven't taken possession, or you haven't filed any legal action on the property, that you lose your tax deed interest in the property. That's a recent case. That's within the last 6 months. If you haven't taken possession, or if you haven't filed a writ of ejectment or quiet title action or whatever against taking legal action against the property or property owner, then you lose your tax deed interest. Now, in the Rio Props case, when I heard that, I thought, that is so wrong. That is no way that'll stand. Well, for whatever reason, the other party did not appeal it to the state Supreme Court. I got a feeling that somebody will eventually, but right now that's the law of the land until somebody does appeal that. So in light of that, what I would say is make sure you've either taken possession or you've gotten your lawyer to file for eviction or writ of ejectment or whatever by the time that 6-year anniversary comes around? So, good question. Any other questions? Yes, I am. That's in the very next segment, which we'll get to in just a second. We're almost there. Okay, possible problems, pitfalls, gotchas, and other general stupid stuff. Okay. All right, take a little bit different angle here. If I really wanted to get into trouble quickly, here's some of the things I would do. Attempt to take possession of a certificate or tax deed property without doing my homework. In other words, just go in there blindly. Heck yeah, I got a certificate. Doesn't look like anybody's here. I'm going to go in here. This property is mine. What are you doing in here? Et cetera, et cetera. All stupid stuff. I would go onto the property and remove personal property without going through the proper legal channels. In other words, I would not call my attorney. I would just go in there and start hauling out all the goodies. I would do things to or on the property without taking lots of photos. If it's not written down, if it's not documented, it did not happen.
I have a question on that one, talk about on last break. Used to, the cameras always had the date stamps or stuff like that. And a lot of times now, different suits I read into have issues with cell phones that the date can be easily modified, so
Okay.
it's not accurate. How does that apply to this situation?
Obviously, the more documentation, the better. So if there's a way, and I don't know how to do it, but I don't know, can you superimpose a date? Can you, is there a setting?
There's special cameras that you can get that'll have that.
Or, as goofy as it sounds, video record yourself holding a newspaper of that week.
Okay,
You know, I mean, video is great because you could. This is the video. It's too hard to superimpose a newspaper on a moving video.
yeah, okay,
That'd be a Hollywood.
I know
Yeah.
when I worked for a title for vehicle company.
yes,
When I was doing collections for them, we had an app that had a meta tag inside of the digital, kind of like on a website, the HTML header file.
Yep.
It's all the little small stuff that the user doesn't see. And now we had an app that had the time and date of when the picture and the location. It even had the GPS location of where the picture was taken.
wow,
And I haven't seen that anywhere outside of that one use. So I just,
This is built in on the iPhone. If you go to your photos, if you have an iPhone, you go to your photos and you go through all where they say album, and all of a sudden it shows you what year you were taking those photos. It also is gonna show you location, time, date, and all that. It will show you all the pictures you took that month. And it's gonna set over
is that
this month.
legally,
is that admissible?
I'm not sure if that's legally accessible.
I don't know. Legality, I don't know about the legal, but
Yeah.
it's there, it is there,
But,
on your phone.
I do know, like, when you do take camera, because I used to work for a tower company, and they had to take pictures in the air or whatever. And we had to make sure that the date taken, I don't know if it can be modified, but you can go on like Windows and look in the properties
Yes,
of that, and it'll show you like date taken, even if they try to modify, because some of those tower crew guys like try to say, I went out there when you actually, like, no, you went out there that day. So, you can kind of see it that way, but if you're not technical like that, you may not know
yeah,
that I can figure out a way to go into the properties to see that photo.
right,
And see when you actually took it, when you're trying to modify on the actual date, time
Yes.
stamp on the photo.
sure. Well, I knew you could go in, you could drill down, and your phone would tell you, or Google will tell you when you took the picture. Now, if that's admissible in court as evidence, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I know I'd be willing to do an affidavit saying that, or under oath say when I did it, but that may be the best you can do. But nonetheless, I'd still take a bunch of pictures. So, I mean, you can know that if the daffodils are blooming in the front flower bed, that it's not July, okay? So there, some little things like that. Have the attitude that this property is my ship that just came in. That's a good way to get into trouble. Be mean and merciless to someone who seems to genuinely want to redeem. I've kind of made it a personal policy that if anybody, I think if they have demonstrated they have have a right to redeem, number two, genuinely want to redeem. I've even had a situation where somebody didn't want to redeem it. They wanted to buy my interest. Maybe it was a property that they had known about or it was a relative's property, and they wanted to buy me out. Well, heck yeah. I mean, especially if it's not really one of my first tier deals, heck yeah, I'll make you a deal. I'll give you a note or some kind of a payment agreement or something. Now, we'll say this. Of the maybe 3 people who have been owners that I've given a note to, none of them have paid it out. And, you know, I know that doesn't sound like a very good track record, but at least I've got a clear conscience.
Yeah.
And, you know, I gave them an opportunity, and we all agreed to the terms. And I remember one of them, there's a trailer, double wide trailer down in Shelby County. It was an older couple. And I thought, I am not throwing these people out. I said, do y'all want to stay? Yeah, we really like to stay. Will you work with us? Absolutely. I said, how much can you afford a month? I can't remember what the total bill was, but what I was going to do is say, okay, this is, maybe it was $10,000 that they owed me because it's a bunch of years of taxes. Maybe it was $10,000. And so what I was going to do is find out what they could afford as a monthly payment, let them set the monthly payment, and then I was just going to amortize it out till, you know, I was going to do maybe 10 or 12% interest, whatever the tax interest was. But I wasn't going to make them qualify for it, and I was going to let them set the term, basically. So I said, okay, why don't we do, can you afford $100 a month? Oh, yeah, let's do $200. I said, no, wait a minute. I said, are you sure? I mean, we can do 100, we can do 50 if you want to, but make it easy. And 200, let's do 200. He made 3 payments. And then I had to foreclose on him. And so anyway, it's kind of a sad situation. But I felt like I'd kind of gone the extra mile to try to deal with them. If people want to stay in their house and they will work with me, then I'm going to work with them. I mean, but if they lie to me or if they try to cut me off, all the bets are off. I'm going to exercise my full legal right to take possession.
Was that after, was that a tax certificate you had on it?
Tax deed.
Tax deed?
Mm-hmm.
And would they still technically have the time period until 6 years?
No, because here's the way I did that. I had a tax deed, and at that point, they still had a right to redeem. And I said, tell you what, I'll give you a quitclaim deed for this property if you'll sign a mortgage with me, because it was not encumbered otherwise. There was no mortgage on the property. So they said, okay. So I deeded them my interest in exchange for a mortgage for the amount that they owed me. So then that extinguished their redemption right because the quitclaim deed conveyed my right back to them, and we started over with a new deal with a mortgage. So then if they quit paying, I foreclose, I get the whole thing.
They didn't take the trailer was included, I guess, in the, gotcha.
Yes. So anyway, so don't be merciless with people. If you think people are lying to you, that's one thing. But if they seem to be coming straight forward and demonstrate it by, signing agreements or whatever, then I encourage you to work with them. Let's see here. If I really want to get in trouble, I do not give adequate notice. No such thing as too much notice. As I said earlier, send out notices to everybody you can think of, knock on the neighbors' doors, put up signs, put up caution tape. Again, there's no such thing as too much notice. If I want to get in trouble, I'm going to think that resorting to a lawyer to address conflict is always the answer or always the first answer. That's the quickest way I know to go to the poorhouse that I can think of is having that mindset. You run across people, or I've run across people, who their answer to everything is, well, I'll just sue them. Or I'll just sue you. And I'm going, whoa. Let's talk. Let's negotiate. Let's see, let's identify, what's going on here. Let's try to come to grips here and try to do all we can to avoid litigating instead of that being one of our first alternatives. Let's don't do that. Because obviously, I mean, I use my attorney a lot, but it's still in very defined, limited situations, and it's stuff I can't do for myself, and it's not stuff that I could negotiate on anyway. If I want to get in trouble, I would not be humble or grateful. The universe is not that big. How many times have you done something good or bad, and later on in time, it has come back to either be a blessing to you or to haunt you? It's happened to all of us. I guarantee it's happened to everybody in here. It certainly happened to me. And especially if you're in the real estate business, and as you get into a specialty, that universe gets even smaller. I mean, if you're dealing with tax liens and that's the main thing you do, there's not that many people doing that. I mean, so I would encourage you to embrace an overall humble or grateful attitude in all your business, no matter if it's real estate or not, because the universe is just not that big.